We are now deeper in the forest, and we have just encountered our first signal. It is in the Copper Penny range. Let's peel back the layers of time to see what had transpired here in the past. Ah! It is a buckle. This resembles a shoe buckle. It would have held a thin strap, so most likely would have not been a standard belt buckle. It is probably post-industrial revolution, as it is a pressed buckle. Let's place it back in the ground. Perhaps the one-shoed weary traveler will come back looking for it. In the meantime, we will look for more treasure. Hello, my name is Nigel Grockle. I am an archaeologist on holiday, here in the States, looking for the past and not-so-past relics of America. Today, we are going to be exploring a forest on the outskirts of a New England city. This forest has seen a resurgence in wildlife as well as people, hoping to enjoy this same slice of paradise. Metal-bearing visitors would have visited this forest all the way back into colonial times. While old relics are hard to come by these days, we shall see if there are any treasures that have been missed by the scores of detectorists that have scoured this landscape over the years. Let's continue our journey through this enchanting forest. Our next signal is, yet again, in the Penny Range. This range is also reserved for the larger gold items that may have been lost. Let's make quick work of this excavation. Ah! It's a spoon. It's a silver-plated spoon. It looks to be a Victorian relic. The easy way to tell that a spoon is silver-plated is to look at the edges of the unearthed spoon. That is where the plating is most likely to be compromised. Once moisture gets behind the plating, it will start to corrode the base metal. It will then start to delaminate the silver. The thin silver will eventually peel off like tin foil. Let's place this spoon back in the earth. Perhaps a forgetful and hungry detectorist with a backpack full of soup, but no utensils, will come across this spot and be blessed by having the proper utensil come from the ground and save the day. Of course, it may not be wise to be carrying so much food with you, as there have been sightings of bears in these parts. To the bears, you may be breaching etiquette if you are only carrying one spoon and not sharing your meal. The results could be unfortunate. Well, no time to wander, as here is another Penny Range signal. Let's see what this might be. Of course, it is a shotgun shell. These shells remind us that hunters had been prowling this forest long before the city grew up around it. Let's put this reminder back into the ground. It will tell its story once more, when the next detectorist decides to dig it up. While it seems counterintuitive to call the small brass bit a shotgun shell, it is actually what remains of the original casing. Starting in the late 1800s, paper and brass shotgun shells were introduced to hunters. When these shells were discarded, the paper would eventually decay, and the small brass bit would be what was left behind. Today, the modern plastic and brass shells are more commonplace. They are used more widely, as the plastic is waterproof, and the shells become more resistant to moisture and failure. And the last thing you want when that elusive bear is running at you is to have a failed shotgun shell. Here is another Penny Range signal. Let's have a look. Perhaps another shotgun shell? No. It is a pocket knife. It is an ivory-handled pocket knife. These knives were once a standard accessory to many men. They would assist in cutting and opening, and even the occasional knife fight. This trusted old friend was most likely a great loss to its former owner. Well, back in the ground you go. The next person who finds you can reflect on the great loss of this utilitarian treasure. I feel like the 1980s ushered in the end of the trend of carrying small multi-purpose pocket knives. Films, such as Rambo and Crocodile Dundee, had taught the younger generation that "go big or go home" was the mantra to follow. Of course, large hunting knives were more menacing than utilitarian, and the authorities eventually banned them. Now, they are replaced by smartphones. If there is a problem, you can just call for help. You can also take wonderful pictures of bears, just moments before they attack and consume you. This next signal is a lower mid-range signal, reserved for trash and the occasional gold ring. Let's have a look. Ah. Oh dear. It's a modern shotgun shell. While it is fun to find the occasional old shotgun shell, the modern plastic shells are a reminder that there are poachers who will ignore the rule of land. They will hunt this spot despite the law forbidding hunting within city limits. While it may seem presumptuous to say that a human is responsible for firing the shotgun, and not a bear, one must realize that bears would have trouble holding the weapon correctly, as they do not have opposing thumbs. The shotgun would end up slipping from their claws. At best, their aim would be compromised. Let's continue on, but now more aware of this new danger. Deep in the forest, we come across a relic of some interesting times from the past. It looks like some adventurous types decided to drive this vehicle all the way through the forest to its current resting place. While the stone wall saved the car from going into the swamp, it also imprisoned it in its final resting place. This slice of history is an encouraging sign to keep relic hunting in this area, as there was definitely some human activity in the past. This signal is in the higher mid-range, reserved for some silver items. It is also where screw caps reside. Let's have a peek. Ah. What is this? Yes. It's a medal. It has writing on it. It seems to be a fraternal medal from the early 1900s. There is a picture of the high rock tower, as well as a lady's boot buttressed by a couple rolled-up scrolls. It commemorates something from May 16th and 17th in 1916. Fascinating. And here it is, in a forest, on the outskirts of town. Well, back in the ground you go. This mystery will be waiting to be solved by the next person to dig you up. In these modern times, it is difficult to imagine a scenario where one would be walking through the countryside with a medal pinned to one's chest. But it does make sense that before the internet, around the dawn of electricity and the automobile, one would need to display their achievements in a very literal sense. It would have been a way to establish status quickly. Otherwise, you would just be another person in a suit coat and hat, walking through the forest. Oh yes! You cannot forget the hat. Very much a status symbol. The medal would have been the icing on the cake. We are now on a flat area in the forest. It's surrounded by stone walls. So, it must have been a farm field of some sort. However, there are some very large boulders in the middle. I suppose the farmer would have had to work around them. And we have our next signal. It is a very solid silver quarter signal. Let's have a look. Well, not very deep. It is a large cent. It is an 1853 large cent that is in incredibly good shape. Now, normally, finding old coinage like this is a moment to rejoice, as these are very hard to come across in the wild. But this find feels off. This coin was only a couple inches underground. Also, the details of the coin are sharp. Similar coins that are found by detectorists are usually much more corroded and deeper. This coin would need to have been well protected by something impervious to the weather, such as the boulders in the middle of this former field. So, the only other plausible scenario that I can think of is that another detectorist, who may or may not have dressed up as a fantasy reenactor, had found this coin in that large mound of boulders in the middle of the field. The detectorist most likely was walking away as he placed the coin in his treasure pouch. The coin somehow fell out. He had intended to present the coin to the large number of bears in the forest as a peace offering. As he went to show it to the bear with 2 arses and no head, he realized it was gone. He was then consumed by all of them, except of course, the one with 2 arses and no head. That bear was utterly confused by the peace offering. Either that, or the detectorist just went home. Well, back in the ground you go. If the detectorist comes along once more, he will be very surprised by locating this wonderful coin that was once found, then lost. It has been a long journey, but we have time for one more signal. This signal comes as we walk along the banks of a stream. It is yet another perfect silver quarter signal. Let's see what it is. Ah. Well, finally. As advertised, it is a silver quarter. It is from 1941. It is always a joyful occasion when we find a silver item. They usually emerge from their slumber with a shine that is rarely found in most common metals. Well, back in the ground you go. The next person to find you will get to experience the same joy that we just did, finding this quarter for the first time. We are out of time for today. It has been fascinating to walk through this most intriguing forest. We have found a small portion of the many stories that took place here in the past few hundred years. We have also learned that if you need an ally when confronted by a group of bears, the one with 2 arses is your best bet. We shall continue to explore this region in future episodes. Please join me next time for another adventure through time. We'll see you then.